Welcome, the Haunted Tales. Tonight, we embark on a spine-chilling journey to one of the most mysterious and eerie places in the United States, the desert state of Arizona. Known for its scorching heat and sweeping deserts, Arizona holds a darker side, a place where restless spirits roam and the paranormal thrives. In this video, we'll explore some of the most haunted places in Arizona. From ghostly apparitions in old mining towns to eerie spirits haunting abandoned hospitals, these places are not for the faint of heart. So turn off the lights, grab a blanket, and let's dive deep into the heart of the Arizona haunting mysteries. The Queen Creek Tunnel in the heart of Arizona, hidden within the dust of desert hills, lies a secret few dare to speak of: the Queen Creek Tunnel. An eerie, forgotten relic of the past, it stretches deep beneath the rocky soil, silent and haunting. Its history is wrapped in mystery, and those who ventured close often never returned to speak of it. It all began in the late 1800s when the small mining town of Queen Creek was alive with activity. The area was rich with copper deposits, and miners worked tirelessly, tunneling deep into the earth to extract the precious metal. Among the tunnels carved into the mountainside, there was one that stood out: the Queen Creek Tunnel. Unlike the others, this tunnel was different. There were rumors that something darker lingered within it. As the legend goes, one night, the town was struck by an unexplainable tragedy. A powerful earthquake shook the land, causing the Queen Creek Tunnel to collapse. The miners who were inside were never found, and the town was left in mourning. Some say they heard eerie whispers coming from the collapsed tunnel, but no one dared to venture back inside. People began to avoid the area, believing that the spirits of the miners still lingered there, forever trapped beneath the earth. Years passed, and the town eventually faded into obscurity. However, the tunnel remained, its entrance half buried in the crumbling rock and dirt. No one knew what lay beyond, but a sense of dread surrounded it. It became known as the Tunnel of the Lost. Decades later, in the 1950s, a young man named Jack Turner, a history enthusiast and amateur archaeologist, stumbled upon the Queen Creek Tunnel while exploring the old mining routes. Intrigued by the tales he had heard in his youth, he decided to investigate the tunnel. Armed with only a flashlight and his courage, Jack ventured inside. At first, the tunnel was just as anyone might expect: a dark, claustrophobic space with the faint smell of damp earth. The walls were lined with remnants of the mining equipment that had once been used, and the flickering light from his flashlight cast strange shadows on the jagged walls. As he ventured deeper, he began to feel an odd unease creeping over him. It wasn't long before he realized that he wasn't alone. At first, it was just the feeling of being watched. But then, strange sounds echoed through the tunnel, soft whispers, as though someone were speaking just out of reach. Jack froze in his tracks, trying to locate the source of the noise, but there was nothing but the stillness of the tunnel around him. The deeper he went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The temperature dropped, and the air grew thick, as if the tunnel was absorbing all the light and life around him. The walls seemed to close in, and Jack felt a growing sense of panic rising in his chest. Despite his fear, he pressed on, determined to uncover the secrets that lay hidden beneath the earth. Then, he saw it, a glimmer of light far ahead. It wasn't natural. It seemed to pulse, faint and distant, like a will-o'-the-wisp leading him deeper into the darkness. Against his better judgment, Jack moved toward it. His heart raced as he stepped cautiously toward the source of the light, the whispers growing louder in his ears. It was then that he realized that the light wasn't an illusion. It was coming from something alive. As he rounded a bend in the tunnel, Jack found himself standing before a cavernous chamber. In the center, glowing softly, was a crystal-like formation. It pulsated with an unnatural light, casting strange shadows on the walls. The air in the chamber was thick with an ancient energy, one that seemed to hum with a life of its own. Jack could feel it pulling at him, urging him closer, but as he stepped forward, a cold wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing his flashlight. The whispers grew louder, now unmistakable in their urgency. They were no longer just words but frantic cries for help. Jack spun around, his heart pounding as he searched the darkness. That's when he saw them, figures, shadowy and translucent, moving swiftly toward him. The miners. Their faces were twisted in agony, their eyes wide with a desperate hunger. They reached out, their hands grasping for him, their mouths open in silent screams. Jack could feel the weight of their gaze, the desperate pull of their spirits, trapped in the tunnel for eternity. Panicking, he stumbled back, trying to escape the tunnel's grasp. But no matter how fast he ran, the figures followed, their whispers growing louder, more frantic. He could feel their cold breath on his neck, could hear the scrape of their nails against the stone walls as they moved closer. Every corner he turned seemed to bring him back to the same spot, the same haunting chamber. Desperate, Jack scrambled to climb his way back toward the entrance. The tunnel seemed endless, as if it were changing its shape to keep him trapped inside. With every step, the miners' whispers became more insistent, more desperate. They wanted him to stay. They wanted him to join them. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jack emerged from the tunnel, gasping for breath. The sun had long since set, and the moon hung high above, casting an eerie light over the land. He collapsed to the ground, his heart racing, his mind struggling to comprehend what had just happened. When Jack finally returned to town, he was a changed man. He never spoke of what he had seen in the tunnel, but his eyes told a different story. The whispers had followed him, haunting him wherever he went. It was said that on quiet nights, when the wind howled through the desert, you could hear the faint cries of the lost miners drifting on the air, whispers that would never be silenced, no matter how far you ran. The Queen Creek Tunnel, it seemed, was not just a relic of the past. It was a gateway, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead was thin. And for those who ventured too far inside, there was no escape from the darkness that awaited. The Birdcage Theater nestled deep in the heart of Tombstone, Arizona. The Birdcage Theater has been the site of countless performances, yet it is most famous for its history that involves more than just the stage. Built in 1881, it was once a thriving venue for vaudeville, burlesque, and even card games, but over time, it gained notoriety for its supposed hauntings. Its name alone conjures up visions of something eerily beautiful, a cage where both performers and patrons alike were trapped by the events of the past. In the late 1800s, the Birdcage Theater was one of the most notorious places in Tombstone. It was a gathering spot for miners, gamblers, cowboys, and the rough-and-tumble crowd that defined the Old West. The theater was known for its opulence, its lavish velvet curtains, its elaborate chandeliers, and its plush seating arrangements. Beneath the glamour, however, it housed a darker side. Behind the velvet curtains were private rooms where the richest men in town would frequent, engaging in unsavory activities, including gambling and, most infamously, hiring women for their private performances. It didn't take long for the reputation of the birdcage to spread far and wide, and soon enough, it became known as a place where not only performances but also deaths occurred. Strange, unexplained deaths. One of the most chilling stories surrounding the Birdcage Theater is that of a performer named Delilah. She was a showgirl in the early 1880s, known for her beauty and grace. Delilah was a favorite at the Birdcage, and she performed nightly, wowing the audience with her voice and elegance. But her story would end in tragedy. One fateful evening, while performing a particularly captivating number, Delilah fell to the stage, lifeless. Some said she had been poisoned by one of the wealthier men in the audience, though no one could prove it. Others whispered that she had been the victim of a jealous lover or an angry patron. Regardless of the truth, Delilah's death would remain unsolved. It wasn't long before strange things began to happen in the theater. Staff members reported hearing Delilah's voice late at night, singing her final song long after the building had closed. Others claimed to have seen her ghostly figure, draped in the same gown she wore on stage, standing silently in the dim light of the theater's balcony. Some said that she had returned to claim the spotlight that was once hers, while others believed that her restless spirit simply could not move on, trapped in the place of her untimely death. As time passed, the Birdcage Theater continued to operate, though it was no longer the glamorous venue it once had been. The years of prosperity were gone, and the theater's ownership changed hands numerous times. Despite this, the stories of hauntings persisted. One of the most famous legends tells of a gambler who lost everything in a game of poker at the Birdcage. In a fit of rage and despair, he pulled out a gun and shot himself in one of the private rooms. The very room where he met his demise is said to be the most haunted of all, with visitors reporting that the temperature drops suddenly, and they feel an overwhelming sense of dread when they enter. Some even claim to have heard the sound of a gunshot ringing out, though no one has ever found the source of the sound. It wasn't just gamblers and performers who found themselves tied to the theater's tragic history. The Birdcage Theater became notorious for the number of deaths that occurred within its walls. From violent altercations to strange accidents, the building seemed to attract misfortune. As the years went on, more and more ghostly figures were said to haunt the theater. The figure of a man in a cowboy hat was often spotted sitting at the bar, his face obscured by shadows, while patrons swear they could feel a presence watching them from the balcony. Yet, perhaps the most famous ghost of all is that of the Lady in White. She is often seen standing at the top of the staircase, gazing down at the crowd below. Some say she was a woman who worked as a prostitute in the back rooms of the theater, though there are conflicting stories about her identity. What is known is that she met a tragic end. Some say she was pushed down the stairs during a heated argument, while others believe she jumped in despair. Regardless of how she died, the Lady in White is one of the most frequently encountered spirits at the Birdcage. Visitors to the theater have reported hearing the sound of her footsteps following them as they walk through the halls, but when they turn around, she is nowhere to be found. Despite its haunted reputation, the Birdcage Theater has remained open to the public. In fact, it has become a popular tourist destination for those intrigued by its dark history. Visitors can take tours of the theater, where they can learn about the building's past and heard the tales of the many spirits said to linger within its walls. Some even claimed to have had personal experiences during these tours, from the sensation of being touched by an unseen hand to the sudden flickering of lights. Others say that they have witnessed strange, unexplained phenomena, ghostly figures that seem to vanish when approached, or a chill in the air that disappears as quickly as it arrives. Today, the Birdcage Theater stands as a monument to the strange, the tragic, and the supernatural. Though many years have passed since the days of vaudeville and burlesque performances, the building still echoes with the sounds of its past. The ghosts of the theater's former inhabitants, both performers and patrons alike, are said to remain trapped within the walls, forever bound to the place of their untimely deaths. For those brave enough to visit, the Birdcage Theater offers a glimpse into the dark underbelly of the Old West, where tragedy, mystery, and the supernatural continue to linger. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, it's hard to deny that the spirits of the past still hold sway over this historic venue. The question remains, will the Birdcage Theater ever be free of the restless souls that haunt it, or will it forever be their prison? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, this haunted theater will continue to captivate and frighten those who enter, long after the lights have dimmed and the final curtain has fallen. Jerome, Arizona. A town built on death. The desert wind whispered through the abandoned buildings, rattling old wooden shutters and sending spirals of dust dancing through the ghostly streets. Jerome, Arizona, sat high in the Black Hills, a decayed remnant of its former glory. It had once been a booming mining town, rich with copper, greed, and blood. Now, it was home to the lost souls who had never left. Emma Carter had heard the stories. She had read the warnings. Yet, something about Jerome called to her. A journalist with a taste for the paranormal, she had spent years chasing ghost stories across America. Jerome, known as the wickedest town in the West, was next on her list. She arrived at dusk, the sky painted in hues of burning red and purple. The air was thick with history, the scent of earth and rust lingering in the breeze. The town's main street was lined with old saloons, dilapidated hotels, and weather-worn houses. It felt frozen in time, an eerie echo of the past. Emma checked into the Jerome Grand Hotel, the most haunted place in town. It had once been a hospital where countless miners had taken their last breath. Rumors of ghostly apparitions, shadow figures, and inexplicable voices filled its history. The concierge, an older man with sun-worn skin and knowing eyes, handed her the room key with a solemn nod. "You came looking for ghosts, didn't you?" he asked. Emma smirked. "Something like that." He sighed. "Careful what you look for in Jerome. Some things don't like to be found." She dismissed the warning. She had heard similar words in every haunted town she had visited. But as she climbed the narrow staircase to her room, a chill settled in her bones, and the air felt heavier, almost suffocating. That night, Emma wandered the halls, camera in hand, searching for signs of the supernatural. The hotel was eerily silent, save for the occasional creak of old wood and the distant moan of the wind. She snapped pictures, hoping to catch a glimpse of the spirits that supposedly roamed the corridors. Then she heard it. A whisper. At first, it was indistinct, a hushed breath against her ear. But then, it became clearer. "Help me!" Emma spun around, her heart hammering. The hallway was empty. The air had turned ice-cold. She swallowed hard and pressed forward, drawn by an unseen force. The whisper led her to the third floor, where the spirits of former patients were said to linger. She stepped cautiously, her flashlight beams slicing through the darkness. As she reached the end of the hall, her blood ran cold. A figure stood in the doorway of room 32. It was a man, his clothes tattered and covered in dust, as if he had stepped out of a century-old photograph. His eyes were hollow, filled with something deep and sorrowful. Emma's breath hitched. "Who are you?" she managed to whisper. The man lifted a shaking hand and pointed at the floor. Then, just as quickly as he had appeared, he was gone. Emma hesitated only a moment before stepping into the room. The air smelled of decay, of something long buried. The wooden floorboards beneath her feet felt uneven, loose. She knelt down and pushed against them. One of the boards gave way. Her fingers dug into the gap, and she pulled it free. Beneath it lay something that made her stomach turn. Bones. Human bones. Emma's breath came in short, panicked bursts. She fumbled for her phone, snapping pictures, her mind racing. Had the man in the doorway been leading her to his own grave? Suddenly, a gust of wind tore through the room, slamming the door shut. The light flickered, and the whisper returned, more urgent this time. "They killed me. They buried me here." Emma's hands trembled. "Who?" she whispered. The air grew colder, pressing against her chest like an unseen weight. Then, the whisper came again, barely audible but unmistakable. "The town." A shiver ran down her spine. Jerome was a town built on death. Greedy mine owners, ruthless outlaws, and desperate men had killed to protect their fortunes. How many others had been buried, hidden beneath its crumbling buildings? The whisper faded, and the air grew still. Emma knew she had found something the town wanted to keep buried. And she also knew she couldn't leave without telling the world the truth. But as she stood, clutching the evidence, she couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching, and they weren't happy. And there you have it, a glimpse into the haunted past of Arizona. From ghostly miners in Jerome to the sorrowful spirit of Leona at the Hotel San Carlos, Arizona is home to many restless souls who refuse to move on. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, there's no denying the chilling history that lies within these haunted places. If you enjoyed this creepy journey through Arizona's most haunted spots, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story from the Haunted Tales. As always, keep your lights on, stay safe, and remember, the darkness might be closer than you think. Until next time, my fellow horror fans, stay spooky.